you do you.
That is amazing. I mean, the Halloween picture, I saw a lot of really cute costumes that had me, I don't know. Do you ever just like, Sarah, are you just like, I don't know if I should say this. The Halloween costumes get me.
Yeah, don't say baby fever over Halloween costumes. That's too much.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, we had a week break from this, so I'm excited that everyone is back and we can dive into some of these questions. There is one that I want to touch on right away because Sarah asked for it, and also I think it's really important, and I think that we can get a lot of different perspectives on this question. And just diving right in here. Sorry, guys. The question is, I live in a super flat area and there are no hills. My parking garage only took me 10 seconds to run up. How am I supposed to do hill workouts? So, Sarah, since I think this might have been one of your athletes, I'm gonna let you kick it off, and then Drew and I can jump in later.
Well, I was hoping to get some perspective because I didn't, I live in a very hilly area, and I actually have like the opposite problem, which is like easy workouts are hard for me to come by. Everything's at least like 600 feet of gain out my door, but I was reading like overpasses or like ramps to overpasses, things like that were helpful, finding a parking garage that maybe like had more levels, and thinking like we don't need to overthink like how steep the hill is. Like we're looking maybe one that can be the 20 to 30 seconds, but maybe like it doesn't need to look super intense, like that the length is more important. But yeah, I'm curious about how you all give hill workouts to folks in super flat places.
Yeah.
I like, if I could just real quick, Kristen, so it's different for everyone, right? The idea is that if you were to try to simulate every race you're ever going to run just where you live, like that's obviously impossible. And so a lot of people that run ultras or run hilly races don't live in hilly places. And so a couple places I like to tell my athletes to go could be like the parking garage, like you talked about, Sarah. Really gradual incline, but incline nonetheless. So you're still working those major muscle groups. Stairs, like if there was like long flights of stairs at like a public park or whatever it was, like stairs are awesome. Or even in a gym, I know a lot of gyms have those dreaded stair climber machines or whatever. But anything really that helps you get up maybe on your toes a little bit, where you can practice maybe a slightly exaggerated form, like really utilizing your arms maybe a little bit more than you would on the flat. But all of that could be really, really useful in getting those physiological adaptations that you would see from just hilly courses. Kristen?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think as someone who lives in the Midwest right now, I definitely like feel the weight of this question because I've been wondering too. To Drew's point, getting on the stair master, whatever that, the stair stepper, the like Mountain Doom is what I refer to those machines as, machines of doom. I think that those are very, very helpful. I think you can also add in a double every week, maybe like Thursday, or if you do your Wednesday workouts in the morning, you can add in like a tread hill double type of thing. If you have access to a treadmill, just turn it at the highest incline and power hike, jog for an hour, 30 minutes, whatever you have time for, just to get that in. But I do think that with my athletes, I often prescribe, or in our welcome email I send out, it has links to David Roach's mountain legs exercise. And I think that even for flatlanders, doing those exercises 2 to 3 times a week is super beneficial, because you're still getting that unique biomechanical feeling of lactic acid as though you would be going uphill, so your body can kind of adapt to to that fatigue and build resistance from it. I think it's also important to, like Sarah said, find a hill. It doesn't have to be incredibly overwhelming or intimidating. Find any hill and, you know, do repeats on it, make it work for what you've got to do. If you live in a really flat area and your coach prescribes something like 4 by 20 seconds, you know, you could break that into 8 by 10 seconds and get those same benefits, and just make sure that, you know, you're leaning forward and you're still getting that calf muscle stress that you would from normal uphill running. One other thing that I did some research into this and saw that David Roach wrote an article about it and said, you know, every week or two, you can practice doing something like 4 by 15 minutes at a 10% grade with 5 minutes flat in between. So back to the treadmill idea. I think also doing eccentric heel drops, calf raises, anything that you can do to mimic those biomechanical like muscle firings that you need to run uphill will make hills feel easier over time for a flatlander. But definitely, I'm a huge fan of the mountain legs exercises and have found a lot of success with doing that 2 to 3 times a week. It sucks, it hurts, you know, but it's like, it's 3 minutes of pain. And if you can get through, you know, a long run or a race, you can get through 3 minutes of mountain legs. It's not too bad.
I like the concept of like just embracing the suck. I know we talk about that a lot, but it is so important to understand that no one likes, like literally, like very few people like to do hill repeats. It's one of the toughest, hardest workouts that you're going to do. It takes a lot of effort. It's a very strenuous on your body, but it is one of the most important workouts that you'll do throughout the week during different phases of your training. And something that I've incorporated with some of my athletes, and maybe the other coaches can see if they like this or not, I don't know, curious to see what y'all think, but sometimes when we have shorter hills or there's not like some long, like we're practicing like 2-minute climbs today, like obviously not everywhere you can go climb for 2 straight minutes. And so really trying to increase the effort too, in which you run to maybe help get you into that anaerobic threshold, maybe a little faster, where you can really play around with just how your body feels during a tough workout. I don't know if either of you have really messed around with that before. It's like you said before, if you can't do, you know, 4 by 20 second, do 8 by 10 seconds. But in that aspect, I'd also be like, well, I also want your effort to be a little higher, since 10 seconds is what you're going to do before you get that rest. So absolutely. I like to kind of fluctuate pace, so to speak, throughout the workout.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I think that if you don't have access to hills, or I had an experience this last week in Oregon where we went to a trailhead where I was planning on doing hills on the coast, and we get to the trailhead and the whole trail is like fallen into the ocean, right? So that like the North Trailhead of Cape Lookout is closed, guys, don't go there if you're trying to do hills. And so my adjustment to that was to do a speed workout on the beach. And that ended up being more effort based, because I know that I get more fatigued doing hill workouts than I do during like flat interval training. So my intervals got taken up a notch effort wise to try to mimic that effort that I would be doing on hills. So I've done, like, I could have run the sand dunes, could have, but I was just at a point too where I was like, I just wanted to run. I, you know, didn't want to overcomplicate it, didn't want to overthink it, didn't want to like get frustrated about it because it was in a beautiful place. And so sometimes you just got to do what you can with what you have. And if that means pushing a little harder on your intervals, that's what you do.
Man, if like hell would be like walking or running up a sand dune that never ends. Like I can't think of anything worse, honestly.
We used to get bussed out from Eugene, from the University of Oregon, to the coast in Florence in college. And it was just hill repeat or sand dune repeat. It's not even hill, it's just dune repeats over and over and over. And so when I saw that I had the option of doing sand dunes for hills, I obviously chose not to. There's still a little trauma from 10 years ago in college.
It's okay. You're safe now.
I think one really good point that you hit on there, Kristen, is like, I do think that if we can, if you've got hills coming up, if you can think ahead of time about where you're going to do those hills, like that's great. And that's ideal. And it's good to have like your normal route that you do that's got hills. But if you have a workout planned and you think you've got a hill that's going to be long enough or whatever, or you think that you're going to this trail and it's closed, remember that you can just roll with that. And like, if that day you have to deviate from the plan that your coach has for you, like, you're not a failure. You didn't mess up. Like, it's okay. I had a run recently where I had 3-minute hills in the middle, and I got to a hill and it took me not 3 minutes to get up. And I was like, oh no, my whole workout is ruined. I've been looking forward to the after of the 3-minute hills all week, and I didn't get to do it. And I was bummed, but like that happens. And it's really important to not then like decide that the whole workout was crap because you didn't get the exact number of minutes you wanted on that hill or the exact number of seconds. Like, that's okay. Just roll with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much, because there are so many things that happen in training, in races specifically, where you're required to problem solve on the fly. And I think that, to Sarah's point, where it's like, yes, it's a bummer because you've been thinking about this all week. You might have been looking forward to it. It might have taken you, some like mental strength to look forward to it. And then you don't get to do it, or you get to a place and you're either relieved or you're pissed. But I think being able to adapt is one of the very best characteristics that ultra runners have. And I think in cases like that, you're not a failure. Not doing something like that. Things that are out of your control don't ruin your training block. They don't ruin the week of mileage. They don't ruin you as an athlete. So I think being patient and compassionate in situations like that is really important, because it is really easy to take things too seriously. And I know TJ says, like, we talk about this a lot, the idea of like holding something lightly, holding your training lightly. And this is an example of that, I think. Yeah. Drew, do you have anything else about hills you want to chat, or should we?
Not really. Like, talking about it's giving me anxiety. So if we could go on to the next question, that'd be awesome.
Okay. I love that. Let's see. Some of these questions are really good. One that I think we should definitely address is, typically during the fall, I've noticed with some of my athletes, they're like, I'm starting to feel really tired. Maybe they've had a crazy summer race schedule. Maybe they've done some like big fall events. A lot of people wait until the fall to do big runs like rim to rim or run rabbit run, things like that. And you're just kind of feeling like the holidays are coming up. There's lots of food. There's boozy hot chocolate. Like, maybe running's not going to be a priority. That's totally fine. And I think it's really important to acknowledge this with the holidays coming up. And the question is, it's been a long year of running. When should I take an off season, and how long should my off season be? So, Drew or Sarah, do you guys want to kick this one off? Do you have any ideas or experience with this?
I don't have a ton of experience. Like, there isn't like one season, like, listen up, everyone. Runners don't run in the winter. Now, like, it's different, obviously, for everyone. It depends on your level of burnout. It depends on your next adventure, like what you're signed up for. It's really hard. I know people that go through like long training cycles where they've been maybe training for the same race for 2 years, and others that maybe train for like a very specific race, hardcore, for 6 months, and then they need a break. I think a lot of it, can be boiled down to like, how are you feeling physically? Like, how are you feeling like mentally, emotionally? Does the thought of going out to run make you happy, or do you dread that? Are you nervous about that? Are you not looking forward to that? I know we talk every now and then about running should bring you joy. It should make you happy. It should make you excited for the most part. And so when you're not feeling those things, it might, regardless of the time of year, it might be time to maybe take some time off and refresh both physically and mentally, and kind of go from there. I know that the winter time is traditionally an easy time to maybe take off because of maybe the shorter days, the lack of sun, the maybe weather conditions, whatever it may be. But man, that's a tough question to answer generically for everybody.
Yeah, I would say, definitely be communicating with your coach about something like this. I think that's something definitely you want to be not deciding totally on your own. You want to be deciding it with your coach who is thinking about your training and has, intention around the workouts that they're prescribing and those sorts of things. So, start that conversation for sure. And yeah, I think Drew just hit it all right on. It's about what you need. And you are the expert in your own life. And so you know better than anyone else what you need. And so, paying attention to the emotions that you have around running and paying attention to the way that running makes you feel physically are good indicators as to whether or not you need a break. But there's no right or wrong answer. It's really about you getting what you need.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that communicating with your coach about this is so important, because if we don't know how you're feeling, if we don't know the levels of fatigue or burnout you're experiencing, we can't plan your training around that. We can't read your minds. And so that's pretty tough. But I think one of the important things is knowing that in talking to your coach, there are ways to structure an off season. If you are really into skiing during the winter, if you get really excited about fat biking on snow trails or cross-country skiing, there are ways to do this where you can incorporate small amounts of running if you are still interested in running. So there's just different strategies that you can take. But I think one really cool thing about off seasons, especially during the winter, is that it's a really great opportunity for you to find a breakthrough. Whether that's taking 1 to 4 weeks off or longer if you need, or doing something completely unstructured and not having a set training plan and only running when Drew mentioned, when you feel joy, when you want to run, when you feel like running, when it brings out the best in you. I think that having that psychological break from structure is really important. But I also think that giving your body a chance to reset and recover and rebalance itself after a really stressful, strenuous training block or series of training blocks or races or seasons is so important, because what's going to happen there is your body will reset, recover, but it will build back stronger than it was before, which allows you to run faster, run more mileage, and just kind of push your limits more than you might have thought possible previously. And I think that that's one of the coolest things about having I wouldn't call it a break, but having an off season of sorts. And one other thing that I will mention too is that even if you are having an off season or wanting an off season through the winter, you can definitely structure this around even 3 to 4 days of running is great. And 3 to 4 days of running with cross-country skiing or downhill skiing or backcountry skiing or mountaineering. There's so many winter, extreme sledding, anything, there's so many things that you can do to get a workout in, whether you have kids, whether you have a dog, whether, you just need to get outside. I think taking that time is important, but I also think that if you have big goals for the spring or early summer, I wouldn't take too long of a break. I wouldn't take 4 weeks of an off season unless within that off season, we're using air quotes, off season, unless within that amount of time, you're still running 4 days a week consistently. Because you're still building a foundation to it's like a launch pad to jump off later. So it's dependent on the athlete. Like everything. This is a really long way of saying
I like
that.
the concept of really incorporating a lot of cross-training endeavors, but never truly giving up 100% on the run. And that's so important. Running is very stressful on the body. I don't know that there's another activity aerobically that you can go out and achieve the same result with any more stress than running provides on your body. And so I do think that it is important, like Kristen mentioned, to kind of keep something, right? Don't like, obviously don't do nothing, but if you take off 3 months and all you do is swim, or all you do is, I mean, maybe cycle or something like that, you're probably going to find that your, I guess, introduction back into a training cycle is going to be pretty tough for a variety of reasons. And so I'm really thankful that you mentioned that, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think kind of building off of that too, where you don't want to get to the point where you lose all of your fitness. You know, you've worked really hard to get that, and you want to maintain it as much as possible. So an off season does not mean no running. You know, it does not mean couch potato season. It does not mean Netflix and chill season. It does not mean eat all of the, I mean, I would probably eat all the cookies, so I'm not even gonna go there. But it doesn't mean not running. It doesn't mean not moving your body or being active. It also doesn't equal failure. So finding a balance there is going to be important. And again, work with your coach, talk to a therapist, you know, talk to your running friends, see how they sort of balance their, why do I keep forgetting this word, their off season. Try to like talk to friends, training partners about their off season, see what works for them, see if that'll work for you. Talk to your coach about it. If you have trouble with, you know, self-worth or comparison, you know, shut down your social media for the extent of your off season, limit your time on Strava, limit your time on Instagram. You can mute people on social media that you might normally be really excited to see what they're doing. But like, take care of your brain as much as you're taking care of your body during this time, because it's really easy to fall into the trap of like feeling like you're not doing enough when your body actually really needs to just recover.
I also I really encourage people to reflect, like, if it's like, oh, well, the holidays are so crazy and I'm going to be so busy, so the easiest thing for me to do is to give up the running piece, because that takes up so much time. You know, thinking about the why behind the break, right? So if the why behind the break is really like, I'm going to be stressed out with the holidays, remember that running is our self-care in a lot of ways. And it's a lot of what's keeping us going. You know, it's one of those things you think, oh, well, it's going to free up my time, but then you don't realize that you're also letting go of one of your major coping skills and like, you know, something that's providing a lot of benefit for you. So when you do think about, you know, if you're thinking about letting go of running because of time constraints, do think about the other things that it's bringing to your life, right? Not just like what energy is it taking, but what is it giving me too?
Yeah, I think that's really important, because I think that there are a lot of, like, everyone has different needs, but I think like the four main ones are like, I don't know, it's like fun, belonging, freedom, and achievement. And you can get all of that through running, which is probably why we all love it so much. It brings a sense of community. It brings a sense of accomplishment. You know, it's your time. You can be selfish with that time. So before making the decision to drop running over the holidays, like, really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. If it's because your body's really tired, you know, let's talk, have a conversation with your coach. If it's because you're going to be at a lot of holiday parties and you're going to be out late and it's not going to feel good to wake up early in the morning and get your workout in, like, I might kind of like elbow with like a hard elbow my athletes into like dialing it back to like maybe 2 drinks and refocusing on your why. Because it's easy to quit over the holidays. It's easy to completely back off, but it's not beneficial in the long term.
There's a million other things you should probably give up before the one of the few tools that's as cheap as it is that really deals with your both physical health and mental emotional health. There's got to be something else that you could give up to get that time back or whatever. If it comes to that, where you're just like, man, I'm out of time. I got all this shit going on. Like, what am I going to do? Like, don't stop running at all. Please don't stop running.
Yeah. there are a million other things you could give up before giving up running. Cool. So I think one other thing, and I think this will take us probably through the rest of the call. Honestly, I think I'm really excited to get your guys' thoughts on this. We talk a lot in these calls about expectations of ourselves in running and training in our communities. And one of the questions that came in was, how do you let go of the expectations of others? And they brought up the idea of, like leading up to a race or some monumental training event, how can we keep our progressive mindset intact when others expect us or relay to us the necessity of more tangible goals? So an example of this is like, when you're training for something, a lot of your friends or family will ask what your goals are for the race. And it can be really hard to relay the deeper experience that you're going for. And I don't know, they might even think that they're being supportive in setting these like crazy standards for you when they're not the one doing the training, they're not the one on the line, and asking about a finishing time or a place, or saying things like, I bet you get first place in your age group, or, I'm guilty of this sometimes too, but saying like, you're going to finish way faster than your cutoff time, or you're going to surprise yourself. Because I think that kind of adds more pressure to athletes than it adds support. And I'm interested to hear, Sarah and Drew, what your guys' take is on situations like that.
It's just a great place to practice boundaries. Right? So you can always thank people for sharing their thoughts with you and let them know that you are identifying your own race goals and that you have the experience to do that. Most people don't understand the things that we are doing. I think like 1% of runners run marathons. So when you think about, and like there, and not that many people are runners, right? And so when you think about the things that you're doing, the people who are trying to give you advice often don't even know what they're talking about or understand what they're talking about. So reminding that like this was a well-intentioned person who has no idea what they're talking about. And just like that reminder to yourself that like, this isn't about anybody else, it's about you. And just because somebody is encouraging you to have a certain kind of goal or wants you to think about your race a certain way doesn't mean that you have to, and you don't have to answer to anybody else. And it's your race and it's your time. And, some people are going to be annoying, and it will happen in like everything that you do in life. People have their opinions about your work, about your parenting, about your relationships. And it's important that you are confident in the decisions that you make and in the way that you're living your life and the way that you're doing your races, and you don't need other people's approval. So just that, that self-compassion, that confidence that you know yourself better than anybody else.
Yeah, I agree. So important whenever anyone kind of maybe unknowingly sets expectations for you, that I've always kind of combated that by being like, well, I really appreciate that, but I think that my goal this time is just to have a good time, or just like have a fun time, if that makes sense. Not like time, but I don't know. A lot of people that do that stuff, like mentioned in the question, I think you said, Kristen, was like friends and family and stuff like that. These are people that love you and they care about you, and they're trying to pump you up and make you confident in a way, and pump up your confidence. And so kind of poo-pooing that and like really letting them like, please don't do this, like it can really kind of set, I guess, a bad precedent for future stuff. So, but it's tough. Boundaries are tough. Like Sarah said, it doesn't matter what endeavor you're in, like boundaries are really tough. But sometimes when people get really specific, I like to really take a step back and be very general with my answer. I'm one of those that's kind of held to really high standards by my friends and family who, like Sarah said, know literally nothing about running. And so like, I think my mom still asks me, so like, when am I going to watch you run in the Olympics? It's like, oh, Mom, like you don't get anything. But like, it's a bad thing when people do that to you and you feel pressure, because then we start getting into like the comparison thing, like mentioned in a previous question. You start to feel pressure that maybe makes running less fun because your goals change. I don't know. It's bad. It's very bad. Letting go of expectations, not just for others, but for yourself, are probably pretty important.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything both of you guys said. It is really hard, and it is really hard to navigate those situations. And for people like me who have a hard time with people pleasing and setting boundaries in general, it's really difficult because I like, you know, if I have family members coming out to a race or friends coming out to a race, going out of their way to watch me do something, the pressure's on to perform. And whether or not you have a good race or a bad race, I think as long as you're having fun, you can be present, you can make good memories, you can, you know, show your appreciation that way and say like, hey, you know, I really appreciate you being here. It means so much, you know, it meant so much when I saw you at mile 8 of the half marathon or something. That like really gave me a boost. But you know, this race didn't go the way I planned, or even before the race, you could say things like, I kind of want to go in this with no expectations. I don't want to put that pressure on myself. I'm so glad that you're here. And maybe even just being honest and saying like, I'm so glad that you're here and I appreciate the support so much, but I need to go in with no expectations. I need to just let the race unfold. I don't want to put a time pressure restriction on myself. Because that doesn't always work well for me. So I can't imagine it would work well for everyone. You know, like getting to mile 8 and being like, oh, I'm 3 minutes slower than I thought I was going to be, because then I panic, and that's not fun. And that's not going to make it fun for the people who come watch you if they come out to watch something that you supposedly love and you're not having a good time doing it.
People pleasing is so dangerous. And I know that Kristen's not the only one on this call, let alone in Microcosm. There are a lot of people pleasers out there. And I think where you kind of get in trouble is if other people are maybe setting expectations for you. And then even in like, you're telling them like, no expectations, like, I'm just going to go have fun. In the back of your mind, you know what other people are thinking that you should be capable of. And even if you go out and you run the race of your life and you PR because the pressure was off, and then you still fall short of other people's expectations, it's easy to feel like a failure, something that's important to avoid. And so getting rid of I mean, not to say that you can't be a people pleaser, but when it comes to expectation setting, very important just to set it aside, you know, to not think about what other people are doing and really focus in on what your goal is. What is your goal? Who cares about everyone else's opinion? What do you want to achieve in this race? Write it down, talk about it out loud to your coach. And make it happen. If the goal is to go out and feel good on miles, you know, 24 to 26.2, because you always feel bad, then it doesn't matter if you run a 6-hour marathon or 8-hour marathon or whatever it is. If your goal was to do that and you did it, great. Like, time goals and time expectations, I feel, are some of the most like deadly expectations because they're so hard. Again, getting back to like, running's hard. We all know that, but running a specific time for a race is just incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And it can kind of like, going back into the comparison conversation, it's hard to explain to someone who's not a runner that your time might be slower or faster depending on the course, depending on the terrain, depending on your stomach, depending on your menstrual cycle. Like, there's so many contributing factors to this, where, you know, a lot of studies have been done about women having GI distress before or during their menstrual cycle. And if you're menstruating, if you have your period during a big race, like that's going to change a few things, you know, and being able to not necessarily voice those thoughts, feelings, opinions, concerns to others, but also to check in with yourself and say like, hey, I need to be okay if if I fall short of this expectation, and I need to know that just because I ran a 1:30 half marathon on this course in perfect weather, on this flat course in perfect weather, that does not mean I will forever, I will never run slower than a 1:30 half marathon on any other course in the world. Like, having expectations like that and being able to come to terms with those pieces of reality is really important.
Yeah, whether it's your period or literally a whole litany of other issues why you didn't live up to someone else's expectations, you should never have to explain to anybody. Just want to throw that out there. Like, what you do is for you and no one else.
Yeah, I agree. Sarah, do you ever have any athletes that you work in counseling with who have a hard time with setting boundaries, and what sort of advice would you give someone? Or do you have what are like 3 steps to get better at sort of setting boundaries in this area?
Well, I mean, so I'm terrible with boundaries. I think most of us are, right? I think they're really hard. One of the big things is like, it is really common for us to put somebody else's feelings first, right? So somebody was late and for me, and now that's messed up my whole day and I'm going to be late, but I don't want to say anything to them about their being late because I don't want to make them upset or make them feel bad, right? Now, they've done all these things to make me feel bad and make my day upset, but I don't want to do anything to hurt their feelings, right? That's a really common thing that I think a lot of us experience, where somebody's, bothered us or done something to us and we just sort of take it. So it is a really, really common thing. I work with clients all the time with it because it's not a very easy thing to just like fix. But I think, a really great place to start, like, especially with this, like expectations around friends, like think about how you would want like if your friend finished the race the same way you did, right? How would you feel about their success, right? And you would be like, oh yeah, they didn't hit that goal, but I was still really proud of them because they did X, Y, Z, right? But the story that we tell ourselves is like, oh, well, I'm a failure if I don't achieve the best. But when we look at somebody else, we're able to like be kinder to them or have more understanding about why they might have failed. So things like that, like viewing your own actions like as you would a friend. And then in terms of setting boundaries, I think a good thing a tip I have about that is the more that somebody else needs a boundary, the harder the boundary will be to set. So if you're really like need to put the boundary or need to have somebody stop, like, somebody's really like giving you a hard time about like this race, like, well, come on, what's your time goal? Why can't you just put a time goal? Whatever, they're giving you a hard time. Like, that's the person who needs the boundary the most, right? And then when you say like, hey, I don't want to talk about this, like, I've got it figured out, thanks, I appreciate your input, whatever, they're going to come back probably even harder. Like the people who give you the most pushbacks are the ones who need the boundaries, or the thing where you have the hardest time. Because some of the boundaries we struggle with the most are the boundaries we need for ourselves. So telling ourselves no to things, telling ourselves to go to bed instead of staying up late, right? Telling ourselves, like, that's a big thing. And so that's another place that I would check in. Like, what sort of boundaries are you needing with yourself too?
That's fascinating. I'm super appreciative of that, because I like so many others on this call and in Microcosm just like really struggle with that. And so I think it's super important to talk about and destigmatize, because everyone experiences this at some point, whether it's a local 5K that you're jumping into off the couch or a 100-miler you've been training for the last, 18 months. So I think that's really good advice. So I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Cool. So with the winter topic that we had earlier, we'll go into this question that says, winter is just around the corner, and I find it hard to motivate myself for winter runs and training. Usually I just take the entire season off. Any tips? So this will be this athlete's first winter of training, and they're pretty nervous about it. So I wish I should have brought this one up to the front when we were talking about it earlier. I'm so sorry. This is like a little unorganized, but my first answer to this is talk to your coach. Finding motivation to get out the door in the winter is really tough. If you can work out some sort of balance with your coach, if you have access to a gym or a treadmill or a bike trainer or a yoga studio, there are all sorts of combinations for ways that you can continue to train. But again, don't stop running. Don't just take the winter off. Discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Go ahead, Sarah, you're good.
I think I have questions about like, what is it particularly about the winter that is unmotivating? So my guesses are probably either the lack of light or the cold air. I don't know. Those would be my two guesses. So I would say one, community is great. Like if you can find one other person to run with, I find that I do not sleep in and miss my runs if somebody's going to be meeting me, because I'm not going to do that to somebody. But if I don't have somebody meeting me, it's, I'm much less likely to actually like make it to the trailhead. So, connecting with somebody, find another early morning person. But then I really like focus on your light setup and your winter layers and like get excited about that. Kind of like reward yourself with like getting adventure ready for the winter, and like look at it as like, these are skills. It does take a little while to learn what your setup's going to be, and like what everybody has different things they like about running in the dark or the cold, and they need different things. And so take it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, and maybe find out that you actually really do love cold, dark runs in the morning. I do.
Yeah, I definitely.
Sarah touched on some really perfect things. I was making a list while Kristen was reading that question, but the partner, genius. Like, gotta have a partner, because you're right. It makes it so much tougher to skip when someone's literally waiting on you. It helps keep you accountable, more accountable than having to like write your coach in the log, like, all right, so I bailed, I'm sorry. Like, just get a partner. Gear. Sarah mentioned it. Really, it's not about like you're not wasting money. You're not being frivolous, going out and buying like a new set of like thermal tights or like a new top or new gloves or whatever the issue is. Sometimes like a new clothing item can be very motivating to like get out and use it. Sometimes it can be not just like motivating, but like it literally makes a difference. Like no one's going to go out and run when it's 10 degrees wearing shorts. It just doesn't work like that. And so setting yourself up for success in terms of gear is very, very important. Running in the cold is easier to do when you're well equipped, when you've got the gear necessary to get the job done. So making sure that you're covered there. And then I also wrote down here, setting small attainable goals to get you through the winter. I mean, oftentimes when it's easier to run, maybe in the spring, summer, fall, you might say, all right, well, I've got this 50K that I want to run in 4 months. And then you really don't have a whole lot between, when you start and when you finish, because it's just not necessary. But when you're having a hard time getting out and staying motivated and just skipping days, I always joke and talk about like the winter being like time for seasonal depression and stuff like that, but setting small attainable goals along the way can really be helpful. Even if it's like one every like 2 weeks or something like that, like these 2 weeks, I'm going to get this many minutes, or I'm going to get this many miles, or I'm going to like reward myself for being consistent by going out and like going to a movie with my partner, whatever it is. Like really, really, maybe not even running related goals to help you stay motivated, I found can be really, really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, the comments about gear, I know some people are like, I like don't want to spend too much, or I don't want to do that. Like, buy a pair of gloves, buy your favorite color ear warmer, buy something that makes you feel good about running, that you're excited to wear. Find a cool podcast. Like if you're into like slasher, thriller, whatever, like Spotify has that, especially right now, since it was just Halloween. But there are so many different things that you can do. You can, listen to a book, listen to your favorite music. explore podcasts, run somewhere new, join a running community. If there's like a brewery or a run club in your area, or a brewery with a run club in your area, you can sort of integrate yourself into the community that way. And also if it is really crappy outside, and you're having a hard time getting out the door, like Drew said, you can reward yourself after that. Like if you need to tell yourself, like, I'm going to drink my weight in hot chocolate after I get done with this 5-mile run, do that, do what you need to do to get out the door. Because chances are you're going to feel so much better and more accomplished and just like good about yourself for having done it than you are, to Drew's point, writing in your training log to your coach saying, didn't have it today, it was too cold, I'm sorry.
No, that makes sense. Couple things. One, podcasts about what'd you say, slasher, killer, whatever podcast, they just hit different when you're listening to them in the dark. So beware, you might end up setting some PRs on your training runs when you're out there listening to that. Also, use the community. Like Microcosm is more than just these group calls and talking to your coach about running. Like use your community, whether it's a Facebook deal or whatever. Like post a picture of yourself after you get done with that cold run where you got an icicle hanging off your ear, whatever it is. Like I want to see it. I know that I'm not the only one that wants to see it. Brag about yourself. You're going to get a really like a wave of positive reinforcement that may be what you need to help keep you motivated that week or that month or whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. That like gives me an idea for Sarah for social media stuff with, like who can come up with the best ice beard or ice mustache or ice eyelashes or whatever. Like, I want to see this. So I think we should start a thread on our Facebook page.
I really do different runs in the winter months than I do in the other months. Like I do a lot of trail running, and there are a number of months out of the year where my favorite trails are are too muddy. Like we have mud closures here, like 3 months of the year. And so there are like special winter runs that I do, like that I don't really let myself do in the spring and summer, and I save them for the winter. And I also sort of conceptualize my training a little bit different in the winter because I am running so much less on trails and doing so much more road running. So I think embracing that piece of it too, like even though it feels a lot of times like we do the same thing day in and day out, there is a rhythm and a pattern and a cycle to our years and our training seasons, and like embracing that and leaning into like what this next few months is and like how that training gets to look different than other times of training. And that's cool,
Yeah, I think so. When I think about winter running, I always get really excited because I'm like, oh yeah, this is like, I get to buy a pair of road shoes, which I never do because I typically only run on trail, spring, summer, fall. And then winter is like, I get to work on my running economy. I get to work on my speed. Wearing yak tracks or Catula micro spikes makes you feel like such a badass when you're running on trails in the snow. Like that's cool. So I think there are a lot of like little ways to motivate yourself to get out the door and to like have fun with it, explore a new place. Like trails look so different in the summer or fall than they do in the winter with a dusting of snow. Like you can find beauty in the mundanity of your daily runs just because you're in a different season. So I think keeping that in mind, or, being like, I wonder what this waterfall in the Columbia River Gorge looks like. I'm looking at Andrew Horvatis up here because he's in Oregon. And I just, there are so many cool places to run out there. And there's so many waterfalls that freeze in the winter that just are mind blowing. And, you're not going to see it unless you go run to them. So I think that there's a lot of cool opportunities to explore, and yeah, I got to catch them all this winter. So I think that there's a lot of reasons, excuses to not run during the winter, to not go out, but you can get a pair of, gloves for 99 cents at the dollar store. There are so many more reasons to run during the winter than there are not to.
As much as like running in the winter hurts my face and my heart and like every part of my body, There is something about running in the winter that is so peaceful and it's so quiet. There's a lot of people that take off the winter time. The whoever asked this question, you're not the only one. I feel like it's a large percentage of runners that take off in the winter time, especially where I live, where you just get a lot of people that just run because the weather's nice, and then end up taking off. I joke all the time and say, like, we get rid of the bicyclists, like the annoying mosquitoes of the summer, like the bicyclists, and they're gone. So then runners, like the real runners, come out in the wintertime. But for real, it's so quiet, it's so peaceful. I like to not listen to music or not listen to podcasts oftentimes when I run. And when it's cold, it's just, it's like, it's clear. The air is clear. There's no air pollution, like noise pollution, I mean to say. It's just really freeing and a really great place to have, just deep thought and to think about your day and to think about life in general. Highly, highly recommend, if you haven't run through the winter before, to start. And I bet you anything, you're going to like it a lot more than you thought you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I am picturing just like those lovely winter mornings where the snow just absorbs all the sound. And like those moments are just like, those are the moments that keep me going out, where like, there's so much going on in my brain all the time, or there's a deadline I need to hit, or a tagline I need to write or something. But if I can get out and there's just nothing, there's no sound, there's like, beautiful light reflections on the snow, that's going to motivate me to stay out longer. That's going to motivate me to do the same thing tomorrow. That's going to motivate me to like try to bring someone with me so I can share this amazing scenery with them. So yeah, that was a good question. I like it. Cool. And we're at time. So this is a great way to end the call. So again, to reiterate, running in the winter is amazing. Don't miss out. We're just going to create all the FOMO for everyone who doesn't want to run in the winter. Don't miss out.
And a lot of people get nervous about the winter. People have, I guess they take so long to acclimate to running in the summer. They're just like, I can't do it for the winter. It doesn't take that long. Like running in the winter, you get used to it so much faster than you do running in the heat. So no stress.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. There'll be another call on Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain time.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's.
Right. It's canceled this week.
I believe it is canceled this week. Yes.
Yeah. Zoe's heading to California. Is it in California? Where is she going? Is it Arizona?
I have no idea.
I don't know. She's just going to go somewhere and kick everyone's butt per usual.
So excited.
Try not to set
all the good vibes this weekend. Don't ask her what her time goals are or her place goals, but just send her all the good, fast energy you've got.
All right, guys. I'll see y'all next week.
Cool. Bye, guys. Thank you.